This understanding is not available in objective or anonymous talk about things. Such talk, intersubjectively constituted, aims at being true by prescinding from the narrowness and the illusions of a particular subjectivity. Yet it is itself always equivocal, means to equivocate, and expresses the mendacious intent of everyday existence. The talk that circulates and that equivocates can be stabilized, held fixed, and its truth ascertained only by a subject existing on its own, in its own time, a subject assured of its own mortality. Talk, the said, constituted speech, circulates anonymously. It circulates because it is anonymous. Because doing what there is to be done, one says what there is to be said. But the very constitution of statements, then, the recasting of utterances in the first person singular into utterances in the anonymous form that can circulate freely, is, for Heidegger, a degradation. Statements empty of their meaning when they circulate. Already when they are recast in such a way that they can circulate. And they now function to cover up a sediment of signs forming over the public world. For Husserl's phenomenology, to recover the meaning or revealing power of constituted talk is to reenact the moment of its constitution in the utterance of a speaking subject. To understand constituted statements, one must reactivate the evidence for which their linguistic formulation is the signs. This evidence is the presence of the things themselves, intuitive evidence in a subjectivity which, if real, is always singular, says I. For Husserl, every "it is said that" becomes true in the moment that I see. For Heidegger, too, if the meaning and the truth of constituted discourse is to be uncovered, it has to be converted into speech in the first person singular. It has to be appropriated by an essentially reticent, authentic existence which assumes responsibility for the utterance, reissues it as its own, and answers for it. This answerability is the essential for Heidegger. It establishes and maintains univocity. It is not the reference to evidence, to intuition, that converts constituted talk into utterances in the first person singular. For sight, intuition can form anonymously. Anonymous evidence and the anonymous talk that expresses it is of itself essentially equivocal. The equivocation consists not in articulating two divergent meanings, but in concealing with the very discursive operation upon structures that discloses them. A voice that takes up and passes on what there is to be said, inscribes in its turn the recurrent forms of things and the general form of a world over the singularity of its own situation. This is the only way that the evidence of the singular, the ephemeral, the fleeting, and the unrecurrent can be blurred, and the circumspective gaze be glanced off from the matrix of all singularity, death, in each case only mine. Speech loses its univocity when an existence loses sight of the direction in which it is headed. Utterances that represent what there is to be said are the expression of equivocal existence, which makes itself equivalent to any other existence in the time format of recurrence, everydayness. The double entendre by which only what there is to be said gets put forth as what I have to say, the equivocation by which only the everyday gets seen, is not explained by some weakness, some congenital myopia of finite man, but is explained entirely as aversion to the time that projects itself univocally, irreversibly, into its death, evasiveness in the face of one's own time. Talk means nothing. Talk means to articulate nothingness, to fill time, to share or generalize the singularity of a lifetime, to pass over in silence the mortality of a lifetime. And talk signifies that nothingness, its meaning becoming empty in the measure that it is constituted. If talk empties of its meaning in the measure that it circulates, that is because it was first constituted in such a way that it can circulate, in order to not say something, in order to pass over in silence the singularity of one's situation and the summons of death pronounced by its form. The prudence of the practical talk of the everyday world propagates an empty equivocation, as in the underworld scenes in Shakespeare, where the anti-language of sorcerers mocks the questions of men of action.